Hi, my name is Tom Henricksen, and I've been in technology for 20 years. And I still remember the early days of continuous integration back in early 2000s. First in cruise control, later to Hudson and Jenkins. These have come before the DevOps movement. Of course, they lay the groundwork for a lot of the things we do today. I've been working in the agile DevOps space for almost 10 years now, and I've always been curious about new ways to work. Therefore, I started the DevOps Online Summit, where I interview thought leaders and share their ideas with others. And I am excited to be part of the DevOps Summit Canada. And today, we want to discuss DevOps maturity model. Now, I wasn't sure what that meant the first time I heard it. I've done some research and had discussions with many thought leaders in the industry. So let's first talk about what it is, and then we'll discuss what might be some alternatives that we could look at as well. So depending on your role, you may look at these differently. You might look at DevOps maturity models in a different fashion. So as a practitioner, you may see measurement that may not be helpful. If you're a manager though, you might see this as a way to assess your team's progress. DevOps maturity models, how did we get here? So the word DevOps, of course, was first coined in 2009 by Patrick DeBow. Maturity models, though, have been around for many years and in many different disciplines and industries. So according to Wikipedia, maturity models are a measurement of the ability of an organization for a continuous improvement in a particular discipline. So why do we need a maturity model in the first place? To sell consulting services. Just kidding. Well, kind of. We'll get to that later. Humans are obsessed with measuring things. Now, I could tell you how many championships my favorite team has, one, or we could compare how many cat calendars that we have. I have 0 currently, but my mother seems to think I need one every Christmas. DevOps leaders like to measure where they are in relation to their competitors. Enter the DevOps maturity models. They give us a measuring stick to judge things. Without them, we are just guessing. As DevOps practices have emerged and transformed, we need to assess where we are. Therefore, as an organization wants to fully realize their potential, we implemented all the practices. Are we using them to their full potential? The issues people have with DevOps maturity model is that it implies an end state. Like achieving nirvana, we are now truly enlightened. This is where many experts compare it to a journey instead. Thierry Depot, a DevOps practitioner and thought leader, shared this during the DevOps Online Summit. The problem with maturity models is they assume improvement is linear, context-free, and repeatable between teams and organizations. They focus on arriving at a finished, mature state. Once we are done, instead of following a continuous improvement paradigm. DevOps maturity models assess that team and organization. They look for how they embrace continuous learning. There are DevOps skills and abilities reviewed as well. Let's review a few of the key areas of these models that we looked at for this presentation. Now, having been around the DevOps Summit for a few years and worked with DevOps practitioners a lot, the C word comes up, or culture. Culture seems to be where many people start when they start talking about DevOps. And that word can be kind of nebulous. So therefore, we need to clarify what is meant. One big part is communication. Communication is part of culture. How do teams interact? We need them to identify how many teams should interact. Perhaps we all use Slack. If anyone needs to contact, for instance, the API team, they should message them on their proper channel on Slack. Collaboration is also part of culture. Do teams collaborate, or is there turf wars? Each organization handles these things differently. So organizational structures have a lot to do with this. And DevOps is bringing a lot of those together from different disciplines. Another thing that's very important in the DevOps space is automation. It's really central to what we do a lot. Continuous delivery is where most people focus their automation. Let's turn to the experts in this space. According to Jez Humble's website, continuous delivery is the ability to get changes of all types, including new features, configuration changes, bug fixes, and experiments into production and into the hands of the users safely and quickly in a sustainable way. Now, of course, Jez and David Farley wrote the book on continuous delivery, and it has been 10 years and we still use it and talk about it today. Now, I've interviewed Dave a few times for the DevOps Online Summit, and he is an interesting guest and has a lot of great insights. Many people talk about empowering the team. Continuous delivery does that by creating a pull system. Instead of coordinating or asking for a new build, we automatically create it. The testers can select versions of the build they want for testing. If we need to compare multiple versions, we can switch back and forth to see where a bug started. Anyone can push a button and deploy code. We can also reduce errors by automating deployments. Configuration management can cause issues. I once left a test database configuration in code that got to production. That wasn't a good thing. Deploying and delivering code to production environments often lowers stress too. Perhaps you think it wouldn't do that. As you do it more though, you realize how quickly you can recover from a bug or a misconfiguration. Along with that, you can catch bugs earlier in the process. CD incorporates the concept of shifting left. By automating testing and doing it early in the process, software delivery needs to be a reliable process. Most DevOps maturity models call out the need for a distinct process. Haphazard delivery can give business people a heartache. We need to have a well-defined process or checklist to ensure quality. Now, I've read the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. Now, he is a medical professional and he relates how important it is for medical procedures to have a checklist so nothing is missed. Technical professionals can borrow from this guidance. As we work on user stories, we can have a checklist of items we need to review for things to be considered complete. If we have a completely new team, a checklist might help them understand the corporate norms. We need to spell out delivery of software. How will we handle changes? Who will be able to change what? And how the developers will interact with other roles. The integration of changes, how we use our release management system, as well as the inevitable issue resolution. Every DevOps maturity model has levels. The first level is usually an initial level. This is where we begin our DevOps journey. For instance, you might be in a traditional setup where you have development and operations that are separate. The organization realizes it wants to change and takes a step forward to that next level. The next step in many of these DevOps maturity models is where the DevOps practices that we are all familiar start with. The developers and operations combine and begin to collaborate. The team begins to create a repeatable process. The automation has started. Of course, they will need to add chunks slowly. And the feature size might be tough at this point. It can be hard to understand how to slice work initially. There are a lot of mistakes at this point. Don't make the mistake of turning back though, as some teams do. The process matures and becomes more defined. The team starts to understand what they are doing. The non-production rollouts are happening with little effort. We know what to monitor and when to respond. The team has clear definitions of work. Agreements like the definition of ready and the definition of done are used and understood throughout the team. The final level I will discuss is where we begin to measure output. This is where we will get into where the metrics soon, and this helps us understand if we are heading in the right direction. Things have begun to get optimized. The team is rapidly learning. Yes, we still make mistakes occasionally, but our recovery times are much better. One of those important metrics. Note, some of the models break this into 2 or more levels. Overall, we are getting better. If we are not, then you need to take a step back and reassess. Be aware as you mature, you can fall into a few anti-patterns. These are from Mike Cavus, who wrote about it in Forbes.com. The first is the DevOps silo. This is where we try to fix our silo problem with another silo. This one creates a new bottleneck, of course. Then we have we don't need no stinking ops. This is where operations is replaced by scripts. Then, of course, developers have to fix security and network issues, which they are not well prepared for. And of course, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. Let's talk about some things we could use instead of DevOps maturity models. Let's discuss value stream mapping. This can be helpful in the assessment of the DevOps process. I like how value stream mapping gives you the ability to assess where you are. Therefore, anytime you start something new, a new job or coaching engagement or consulting opportunity, I think it's important to start to know where we are. So first we have to figure out what we're doing and where we're at. So Wikipedia defines value stream mapping as a lean management tool that helps us visualize steps needed to take from product creation to delivering to the end customer, as if in the business process and mapping those methods. It helps with introspection or understanding the business better, as well as analysis and process improvement. In other words, it's a great tool to help us assess the current process. Of course, many Agile and DevOps practitioners encourage us to make work visible, and the value stream mapping can help get everyone on the same page and see this process through its entirety. In addition, this lean management teaches us how to eliminate waste. So we want to think about kind of how we can get started in this process. And there are a few steps for value stream mapping. First off, we need to decide how far you want to go. Anytime you want to assess the process, you need to define how deep you want to get, because that's going to inform who you need in the process. And then you need to define those steps that you want to analyze and review. And then indicate where the information flows throughout the system. And gather the critical data, and then add the data and timelines to your value stream map. And then, of course, we want to use and engage our lean techniques to identify 7 types of waste of lean identifies in the process. And then create that ideal value stream map. So now we have assessed where we are with the value stream map. Let's do but before we look for some other things to focus in, the DevOps maturity models that compared to this presentation have many facets that they look at. For me, I like to focus on a few things at once. The classic whip issue that many of us have. If you are transitioning to DevOps, focus on the right things. Perhaps you've already done some of these, or you're already there, but let's review a few of the DevOps metrics we should track. Now, deployment frequency is a metric that many DevOps thought leaders focus on. Of course, Nicole Fullerton shared this in her Accelerate book, that we settled on deployment frequency as a proxy for batch size since it's easy to measure. She, along with her co-authors, Jez Humble, Gene Kim, gathered a lot of data for this book. So therefore, don't underestimate the value of the ease of measurement. Each organization, though, tracks different metrics. In addition, deployment frequency is easy to get a hand on. But in conclusion, from there, you can begin to chart your progress as you look at assessing where you are. Another good metric that most organizations like to look at when they want to increase speed is lead time. Speed of delivering features, in other words, from idea to cache. Now, this is a good benchmark to track progress. However, our friends in finance and accounting will love this as well. For some teams, this can be low-hanging fruit. For instance, automate some things that lead time will go down. Diminishing lead time can engender fans. Marketing will love when you can update things in days and hours, better than the months or weeks they waited for before. Look for ways to advertise your gains you have made. This can be helpful in building that team spirit. Occasionally, Murphy's Law comes into technology teams, and we need to be ready with a plan or with mean time to recovery. How will we resolve incidents? Think about this ahead of time and track how long it takes. When the recovery is done, do a retrospective. How can we improve our recovery? How can we avoid this incidents in the future? Update your process and move forward. Does your architecture need to change? Is there a lot of technical debt we need to address? Prioritize these items to improve your mean time to recovery. Escaped defects. Automated testing will catch some issues. Code coverages reports and will show gaps. The quality assurance members of the team will spot them too. Occasionally, though, a defect will make it into production. DevOps teams need to track escape defects and look for patterns in the defects. Some might be issues with load testing would find. Could we automate more testing? This metric can gauge overall application quality. Issues creeping up might indicate a further discussion is needed. For instance, did the team add a new technology? Make sure we understand how to use it properly. Failure rate. As teams start a DevOps process, there will be bumps, like an airplane experiencing turbulence. The failure rate is how often we deploy and break things. As we track this, we should see a downward trend. If not, the process needs to be corrected. I once saw a cynical tweet about DevOps. DevOps is just releasing broken code faster. That is not what we're aiming for, though. If that is the case, you need to re-examine your system. Failures need to be examined. Search for solutions. Look for feedback earlier in the flow. In conclusion, we have shared some valuable metrics. However, to make sure they serve you well, don't serve your mission, don't let the metrics lead you astray. Of course, as a developer, I know many companies have monitored lines committed. This leads developers to do strange things. For instance, create long comment blocks. I won't name any names, of course. But these metrics should reflect the value you provide. If they don't, you're wasting your time. And periodically review these trends. In addition, talk with the organization to see if they agree. Now, the Improvement Kata is from the Toyota manufacturing system. It allows us to continually improve. First, we need to understand the direction where we want to go with this project. Secondly, we need to assess the current condition. Where are we realistically at? Thirdly, we need to set a target or a goal. And finally, we use the old plan, do, check, and act loop to reach the target. This might take several iterations through that PDCA loop. Of course, this is outlined in Courtney Kisler's Coursera course. But the Improvement Kata can help DevOps teams increase deployment frequency, reduce lead time, and focus on other metrics. Now, the Improvement Kata focuses on organization or the team, where DevOps maturity models can lead us to looking at many different items. Enter, of course, our lovely WIP issues. Now, Thierry Depot, who was on the DevOps Online Summit, shared this as well. He said, the Improvement Kata is a better approach as it takes organization into consideration than a DevOps maturity model. Now, the Improvement Kata can be paired with value stream mapping. These complement each other to help determine where to experiment. The team can get a broad look at where to focus on with the Improvement Kata. Now, this was originally described in Mike Rother's 2010 book entitled The Toyota Kata. Now, this is a management book, but has a great lessons for us DevOps professionals as well. Rother's basic idea is that lean thinking must be part of the organizational culture. The Improvement Kata is one way to instill that. So as we begin to wrap up our session here at the DevOps Summit Canada, I want to recap where we have gone. We started with the definition of DevOps maturity models, the four main pieces they touch on: culture, how organizations can establish it and its parts; automation, how continuous deployment pipeline can be its backbone for this; process, how organizations can create and support their initiatives; finally, the levels. We outlined the levels that the models walk through. Then we moved to some alternatives. To start with assessing our current state with value stream mapping. Then we reviewed the metrics we can use to focus our team. Finally, we discussed the Improvement Kata that outlines the process to improve any target. I want to close with a quote from Mirko Herring. He is the author of the DevOps for the Modern Enterprise, and he shared this in one of our coaching sessions at the DevOps Online Summit. He said, I have a tricky relationship with maturity models. I created the maturity model at Accenture. Every time someone asks me, though, about it, I try to discourage them from using it. So many of the thought leaders I have spoken with agree with Mirko's sentiments. The DevOps maturity models are bloated measurement tools, and we need to look for alternatives like the Improvement Kata to focus organizational learning and our DevOps success. If you have any questions, please email me at tom@devopsonlinesummit.com. And thank you for your time, and it is an honor to be part of the DevOps Summit Canada. Thank you.